So just before the video starts, I wanted to give a quick shout out to what is quite possibly the most apt sponsorship I've ever come across for Vivec. Oftentimes I'll decline, 99.9% of sponsorship deals I come across, because I just don't think Raid Shadow Legends is very appropriate for the sort of content on this channel. But I know a lot of you like to fall asleep to these report videos, and that's why I thought these COZYSNUG sleep earbuds from LYTMI really are a match made in heaven for this channel and its viewers. If you're anything like me, you might struggle falling to sleep on your back with conventional earbuds in. I'd always wondered whether there were any designs that facilitated side sleeping without waking up with a perforated eardrum. Not only do these earbuds work wonders for side sleepers, they boast high quality audio, are super lightweight and soft with various different sizes of ear wings to pick and choose from, on top of having 21 hours of charge when using the charging case. So, now you can all quickly and smoothly fall asleep listening to me recount the usual litany of mind-bending, reality-shattering experiences that we all know and love. If you're interested, please check out the link in the description, and don't forget to use the discount code VIVEC for 10% off your order. Anyway, we'll crack on with the video now, but be sure to let me know what you thought of the earbuds if you do end up snatching yourself a pair, and thank you to LYTMI for reaching out, I really appreciate it. Swept up into the everlasting orgasm of life. A 20-gram mushroom trip report by On the Beach, posted to EARBUDS.org June 1st, 2006. Earlier in the day, I'd consumed 15 grams of fresh cubes and had a most pleasant second experience with mushrooms. Rather arrogantly, I decided that I wanted to repeat the experience right away. My morning trip ended around 6 PM. By 9 PM, I'd begun munching my way through another 20 grams. I remember walking to the bathroom to purge my system and asking, praying that the mushrooms would show me their dark side. My reasoning for doing this at the time was that my first 2 trips had been happy and philosophical, and I know that the reality of psychedelic usage was that bad trips can and do happen. So I thought it might be useful to try and induce one intentionally, to see if I could understand what was happening to me. Bad mistake. Bad mistake. I'd created an uplifting playlist consisting of trance and mid-tempo chill out, and it was a truly extraordinary thing to be listening to as I was coming up. I began to feel ripples of energy flowing through my legs, and it was the most pleasant sensation imaginable, sexual in a way. I didn't feel sick as I did earlier on in the day, so I gently lay back and let the music guide my soul. The first hour and a half of the trip was simply heavenly. The music soared to ever greater and brighter tones and lifted me up with it. After a while, the feeling I'd gotten in my legs had spread throughout my entire body, and I was feeling orgasmic. I got up and wrote on the PC, swept up into the everlasting orgasm of life, and lay back down once more to continue in this heavenly moment. I kept gently moving my body and torso around. It felt as if I was making love to the music. By that I mean the music was making me feel sexual in a spiritual way. It was so damned perfect. The best feeling I could ever imagine. I kept having to get up to turn the music down slightly, as I didn't want my housemates to come in and ask me to turn it down, which would have also let them realise I was tripping my balls off. I knew this was building up to some sort of spiritual climax. Time slowed. Time slowed. Time stopped. I was looking up at my ceiling and saw a bright white light moving towards me. There was a heavy aliasing effect as the light descended. I interpreted this as being God itself, and immediately thought, what if I find God on only my 3rd trip? How could I ever integrate this experience into my normal concept of reality without going mad? I quickly made the decision to stop this, and as I did, the light disappeared, and I was left in darkness. This is when the trip dramatically gained an overwhelming edge of evilness. After a while, I had to get up to take a pee. I knew I wasn't coordinated enough to get to the bathroom. The only 2 things I had to hand were a Coke can and a Pepsi can. I saw this as a kind of the reverse of the Pepsi challenge, as in which drink I would rather pee into. I chose the Coke can to pee into and chortled to myself at how ironic the situation was. As I sat back down on my bed, the most mind-blowing thing happened. I rested my head in my hands and had a vision of every thought, memory and feeling that was stored in my mind. They were all arranged in a completely random, spherical fashion, and displayed as words and numbers crammed together in a 60s style trippy font. It looked a bit like the font used in the Monkeys logo. I remember thinking to myself, wow, you're actually seeing the inside of your mind. I had a thought along the lines of, I'm the master of all of this now. Once I snapped out of this, I managed to lie back down and hoped I wouldn't experience anything else so unsettling. No matter what I tried, the same vision kept appearing to me. Random words, random numbers, random feelings, all jumbled up into a paradoxical mixture of insanity and genius. After a while, I lost all sense of rationality. My mind would get stuck in cyclical thought patterns, and no matter what I did, I couldn't stop them. I kept thinking strange, nonsensical thoughts like, the difference between all this sameness is all the same again. And the beginning of the end is the beginning also again. It was now just after 11 PM, and I had lost my mind completely. Rationality was impossible because my mind was stuck thinking meaningless thoughts. I kept getting up and looking at the time on the PC, and what seemed like hours and hours was only a minute. It took like just an hour for 5 minutes to pass. All the time I was thinking complete gibberish. Back to bed. It was then that several terrifying thoughts catapulted themselves into my mind. I thought that time itself had stopped, and that I would be left insane forever. I thought either that I was God and that I was playing a trick on myself, or that God was playing a trick on me, and that life, reality, was in fact a construction of my own mind, and that I was, in fact, God. I started trying to do reality checks in an already insane state of mind, and everything I thought of confirmed the fact that I was, in fact, God. Earlier in the day, several of my Greek friends had told me that today was St. Nicholas Day in Greece, so in my delusional state, I thought that I might be a saint as well. I'd recently gotten in contact with an old female friend from my childhood, and soon found out that when we were young she was crazy about me, and I was crazy about her as well. But in talking to her recently, I found out that she had a boyfriend and that we could never have a relationship. She had told me that she was studying to be a teacher. I was browsing online earlier in the day and saw a face that I imagined was like she would look like nowadays. In my delusional state, I went back to this page and read it again. It said that her key words were teaching and learning. In this state of mind, I equated this with her being God and teaching me a lesson. I realized that this was in fact the end of time. Perhaps I had died. I kept trying to remember how I had died, but I couldn't remember, so I concluded that I must still be alive. I knew that time had stopped though, and that God was waiting for me to make a decision. My options? Number 1, terminate myself. This would end the nightmare immediately and reveal myself as God who had constructed this thing known as reality, as a puzzle that only I could solve. I thought of lots of ways to off myself, like wandering out into the road or throwing myself into the sea. Number 2, live, reproduce. This would involve me contacting my female friend and telling her that I needed her in that way for the human race. I thought that as I had identified her as God earlier on, perhaps this was what I was supposed to do. And I thought once I had said that I needed her, that she would in fact tell me that she was God, and that all this was a puzzle I was meant to solve. After an eternity thinking about what I should choose, a third option popped into my mind. Number 3, do nothing. In the back of my mind, I still had the capacity to doubt what I was experiencing. I thought, hang on, this can't be real, can it? What if you just wait to be sure? I kept thinking about Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. I know it's not the same situation, but I was trying to think what he did to get tomorrow to become today. I realised it was because he believed in his mind and soul that he was on Earth to help others with little regard for himself and stop being such a selfish bastard. So, naturally, I thought that this is what I need to do in my life also. Laying there, I managed to utter 4 words. I decide to wait. This was about 5 hours after ingestion, and finally I found some relief. Soon I fell asleep, but not after realising that I had peed all over myself. Remember, earlier I'd practically met God and almost realised that reality is a puzzle meant to be solved. I woke up the next morning very unsettled and confused. I tripped later that day also. It was an amazing trip where I dreamed of being a rock star and saw the brilliance of mankind. My reasons for tripping was that I didn't permanently equate the mushrooms with insanity. I did manage to integrate my thoughts about Groundhog Day into everyday life, and it has actually made me a wonderful, caring person. Serious food for thought there. Something that definitely I've entertained in my deepest of trips. Is God outside of me? Am I God? Are we one and the same? What is the nature of consciousness, perception? Is everyone in their own conscious bubble? Am I trapped in my solipsistic bubble? Are the qualities of either good or bad, or is good and bad just a dualistic game that God or myself plays with itself to create this sense of what we call life or reality? These are some of the deepest questions a human can ask, and there is no clear-cut answer. It's something that I'm still navigating myself. I have to be honest with myself that, yeah, there are some times during these deep psychedelic states, and even just deep mystical states, it doesn't have to be brought on by a chemical catalyst, it can be any form of mystical experience. You can have these just now and then. They can just occur to you randomly. They occurred to people like Eckhart Tolle and many of the spiritual gurus that people look up to. Oftentimes they are accompanied by some deep suffering that spurs on the awakening, but they can just happen like that, by a click of a finger. It really does change your whole life when you start to entertain these thoughts, these grand metaphysical existential matters. You can't really go back to being a normal human, or at least I can't. I'm always thinking about this stuff, always analysing it, and it's both a blessing and a curse. I love analysing and dissecting reality, but it's also sort of dissipated my human experience, my complete human experience. I can't ever go back to being like how I was before I had all of these breakthroughs. I can't really go back to being the solid ego self. I definitely still occupy my own ego 100%, but there's always that air of thought that I am more than just this. I don't know anything really. I don't know what's going on. I don't really know what God is. I don't really know what I am, but I do my best to try and navigate the puzzle that is reality and life itself the best I can. I don't really want to make any claims to absolutism in any of these commentaries. I have my own ideas, and I've shared them many times before for anyone who's consumed a lot of Vivec content. But I also have to be very honest that I don't really know what's going on. I've had transcendent experiences, mystical breakthroughs. I've never had what many describe as God consciousness, God realization, in a direct, sort of brutal sense, where it's blatantly clear, as many suggest that it is in these states of consciousness. I'm open to them being the reality, the truth even, but I also have to be honest with myself that I haven't actually directly experienced it, so how can I give it any credence personally in my own consciousness? Either way, I think regardless of what the truth is, of what God is, what you are, what I am, what it all is, there is an undercurrent of love and beauty to it all that transcends the dualistic, survival ridden notions of what it means to be human, where we're wrapped up in the game of good versus bad, of living in the demiurge's world. When you really sort of break through, when you are experiencing transcendent states, there is an overwhelming feeling of love, peace and interconnectedness. And I do believe, no matter what is actually going on, no matter what the truth is, that the truth must be permeated by love and connectivity. That must be the grandest truth. Although I cannot prove this to myself or anybody, that's the overall feeling that I get, that this really is sort of a love machine, consciousness and reality and life itself, the game of life. But I can't prove that, and I've not actually had any, visceral experiences of that being the truth. So who am I to say what is the truth and what isn't? But regardless, I find experiences like these super fascinating, and you are gonna end up veering down this road if you do experiment with higher doses of psychedelics, and if you do psychedelics for a long time and you have a lot of experience and you're just sort of like chipping away at your ego and opening your consciousness up, expanding it per se. I do believe it does get to a point in every soul's journey, whatever the soul is, or whether a soul is even real. I like to entertain the thought of a soul. I think it amuses me and entertains me, whether I am imagining it or not. I like to perceive life in that manner, and that's just my own little worldview. Whether that's true or not, let's just hypothetically say that everyone has a soul. In each soul's journey, as you are expanding consciousness and the mind, you are going to get to a point in your journey where you have to face the truth, face God, face the magnitude and meta quality of what consciousness and reality in the universe is. Whether you'll actually figure it out and whether there actually is any truth to be found is another story, but it doesn't negate the fact that you will start to entertain and question these existential matters, and they'll start to become a very profound thing for you to contemplate on and integrate into your own life. And it must be said that the spiritual path is not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Many people pursue spirituality for different reasons, to find some form of like peace, escape from suffering, to understand themselves, what God is, what life is, what is actually going on. Everyone has their own different agendas in a sense, and I sometimes hate to use the word agenda because it kind of has negative connotations, but in a sense, everyone's got their own like prime directive in life for what do they want to understand about it. And it gets to a point with psychedelics and spirituality where you have to face the biggest of the biggest questions. What is God? Is God real? If God is real, what is its nature? And what is my relation to God if it is real? Anyway though, seriously juicy food for thought here. I'd like to make a dedicated video one day where I go do my classic shed talks on camera and just discuss like what is God and talk about my ideas, but not make any claims to absolutism. Only a Sith deals in absolutes, Anakin. But just talk about it in an entertaining, down-to-earth sense and just spitball some ideas. What are your ideas about God and consciousness and reality and the nature between the lowercase I, the uppercase I, the lowercase u, the uppercase u? What is I? What is the I-ness that permeates consciousness? What is going on? I certainly don't know. Maybe I'll figure it out one day, but maybe not. Either way, I think what's very important is to sometimes not get too lost in the spiritual, metaphysical, especially if it's causing you a lot of pain and suffering and disrupting your life, derailing your survival needs, your Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the lower end stuff. You need to get that sorted to play the game of life. I mean, you are let's say you are God incarnating as a human. You chose this reality, this experience for a reason. So, in a sense, I feel like a lot of people, I mean, I'm quite young, I'm 27, I feel like a lot of my humanness has been lost to spirituality, and that's all of my own, doing. I chose this path, and I reaped what I sowed, and there's consequences that come with pursuing the spiritual path in a hardcore sense, especially when there's so many areas of the human experience that I haven't really tapped into or succeeded in what I would like to succeed during my short time here on Earth. That's why I'm taking a backseat from psychedelics and spirituality, and just observing it through Vivec and just trying to live a semi-normal human life, or as normal as I can be, being extremely neurodivergent. But yeah, whatever. Hopefully the aliens come down and tell me one day. Although, to be fair, as much as I entertain the thought of like, oh, how sick would it be to be abducted, I'd come on board their ship and talk to them and find out the answers to reality. I always think like, you know what, I also have to acknowledge the fact that I am wrapped up in fear being a human being, and for all my like inner child trauma and all that, I still do get wrapped up in fear. I'm quite an anxious person, you know. If you ever met me, you would never think that at all, but I'm seriously anxious about a lot of stuff, but I just sort of like get on with it. I've always been anxious. It's been like hardwired into my genetics. I have like quite an anxious like family. I was always very scared as a youth. I couldn't really leave the house. I was frightened to talk to people. I couldn't even go to the shop. I was too scared to socialise. I've done a lot of work on myself in terms of socialisation, but if you ever met me, you would never fathom that the person you're experiencing right now used to be like an introvert to the nth degree and literally could not speak or communicate or do anything. And I've really worked on myself in that regard. But there's always that fear, there's always that anxiety there, the lingering trauma of the inner child, if you will. And that's a part of my human spiritual journey, is to navigate through that and sort of, I don't know, well, love and accept myself for who I am and chip away at any trauma and egoic bullshittery that I may have, but it's easier said than done. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. Leave me any thoughts you might have on this rather profound experience in the comments below, and I'll see you on the other side.